The movie begins by showing a large prairie area called Donbas. The border between Russia and Ukraine is where the two countries are engaged in warfare. A married couple, Mykola and Natasha, chose to live in peace and not participate in the conflicts. They lived in a simple house adjoining the hill and away from the settlement. They were happy and harmonious even though they were living a simple life. The next scene shows Mykola, who goes to work on a bike. He is a math teacher, while Natasha is a housewife who occasionally paints and makes art as it is her hobby and talent. Upon arrival at school, Mykola entered the classroom to teach. He got unpleasant treatment from a student who accused him that he was from a Russian country just because he lived at the border. Mykola remained patient. He was a pacifist who did not like violence, even though he was disrespectfully treated by his students.
Іван виплюнув папірець. Добре, Іване.
After teaching and going home, his wife greeted him, and they made love. The following day, when Mykola was leaving to teach, he saw two Russian soldiers guarding the road he often traveled. Even so, he did not feel the slightest suspicion and continued his journey to school. But he didn't find a single person when he got there. Mykola then saw the news on television explaining that the Russian-Ukrainian war conflict was heating up and soldiers in Russia were being demobilized to wipe out the spies suspected of helping Ukrainian fight Russia. Mykola immediately returned home. He saw the two Russian soldiers he met on the street torturing and raping his wife. Those soldiers thought that Natasha was a spy assigned to search for information. When Mykola wanted to help his wife, he was immediately beaten by the Russian army. He tried to explain that Natasha was his wife and they were both civilians. The two Russian soldiers tortured them and burned their home. When the two Russians left, Natasha, upset, got up and threw the Russian car with a rock. The Russian soldiers immediately shot Natasha to death. Mykola was hysterical and was embracing Natasha's body. He was asleep next to his wife's body. The following day, the two Ukrainian soldiers found them and immediately dug into the ground and buried Natasha's body. Mykola was still very struck by his beloved wife's death. He then walked to the ruins of his house. He found a wooden statue made by his wife, and he took it to keep as a last memory. After that, the Ukrainian soldiers took Mykola to the military base for safekeeping. He felt he had no purpose for living anymore. Mykola suddenly said he wanted to join the military training and expel the Russian army from Ukraine, and his intention was approved by the commander at the base. As time passed, Mykola practiced physical dexterity with other Ukrainian volunteer soldiers. At first, he had difficulty with various exercises since he was only a mathematics teacher and a pacifist. So, he certainly never did violent and physical activities. But he had a strong motivation because of his wife's death. Mykola became a new figure superior to all the existing volunteer soldiers. One day, the commander at the base gathered all the new soldiers, including Mykola, to inform them that the HQ was short of snipers in the front row, as most of the Ukrainian snipers had been wiped out by the Russians. Therefore, the commander said he would recruit some volunteer soldiers to be snipers of the Ukrainian army. Hearing that, Mykola immediately stood up and volunteered, but the commander and everyone there seemed to doubt him. Initially, the commander underestimated him because he knew he could not assemble weapons like the AK-47, making it impossible for him to become a sniper. Hearing that, Mykola presented a challenge by saying that he could dismantle the AK-47 weapon in under 20 seconds with his eyes closed. The commander agreed to Mykola's challenge, and finally the commander and everyone there was amazed at Mykola's skills for completing the challenge in just 18 seconds. A captain from headquarters named Gregory, who was there with his aide, felt Mykola could be an invincible warrior. Besides, Mykola now had a new name, Raven. The scene turns to many volunteer soldiers transferred to a particular sniper training ground. In that place, they were all given theoretical training by Mr. Gregory, a senior sniper in the Ukrainian military unit. Mr. Gregory explained that the sniper was a soldier who used cunning means to shoot the enemy from a hiding place. Even so, the role of the sniper was significant and could even change the combat situation. After that, all the new soldiers got SVD-type rifles or Dragunov semi-automatic shotguns. Raven was the only new soldier given a different rifle. It was an old ordinary Simonov rifle whose ammunition loading was still manual. He was given the weapon on purpose because he had no military base and was new to the military world. Raven remained patient and didn't complain. The following day, Raven joined the exercise with his instructor. Although he was treated differently, Raven showed his mentality and determination when he didn't budge a bit as the instructor shot right next to the bodies of the new soldiers, including him. The instructor explained that the exercise was part of sniper training because the basic rule of a sniper is to remain invisible and calm under any circumstances. The scene switches to Raven and the other volunteer soldiers receiving a theory from Mr. Gregory. He explained the specifics of Dragunov's sniper rifle that can shoot targets within 600 meters, while the type of sniper rifle that Mr. Gregory and other senior Ukrainian soldiers use can hit targets within 800 meters. Raven then asked what sniper weapon the Russian army was using. Mr. Gregory then explained that the Russian military uses modern sniper rifles that can reach targets as far as 1500 meters. Yet Mr. Gregory said that what shows the greatness of a sniper is not his weapon but his determination and intelligence while in battle. The following day, Mr. Gregory again provided theories and calculations about firing distance, air temperature, humidity, and wind speed. He emphasized that counting those things was essential to a sniper. He gave a formula to Raven and the other new soldiers so they could shoot accurately. Raven was superior to the other new soldiers because he was used to math while teaching at school. Before Mr. Gregory completed the question, Raven could finish the answer first. In the evening, Raven and the other new soldiers were again trained to fire. They were all required to fire in a situation of minimal light and full of fog. It was the last training for the new army before they were put on the battlefield. When the other volunteer soldiers fired as instructed, Raven waited patiently and did not pull the trigger. There he showed the patience of an accurate sniper by waiting for the right time to shoot. At first, he got a minus because Mr. Gregory thinks Raven's shooting away from the target. But Raven immediately explained that he hadn't shot yet. Shortly after, Raven shot and made it on target, so he got a plus. The following day, Raven was officially accepted as the main sniper in the front row of the Ukrainian army and got the best score. He got a chance to carry out the mission with the commander. The scene changes to the Ukrainian army's top soldiers meeting to attack the Russian military at the border. They agreed to split the Ukrainian army into two teams, sniper and raiding units. The goal was to control the border so that they could send logistical assistance and as a way of rescuing civilians. Raven was sent on a Russian army clearance mission at the border with Mr. Gregory. Raven and his team then arrived in a vast prairie area and were tasked with securing the place, targeting Russian soldiers on the lookout. When Raven was ready in the aiming position, a car appeared filled with civilians, one man and one woman, who were about to enter Ukraine. But the Russians came straight at them, and they beat the man to death and intended to rape the woman. But before all that happened, Raven and his team were set up with their own targets. They managed to shoot down all the Russian soldiers, including the soldier who took the woman hostage behind the car. Raven and his team were declared successful in their first mission and took control of the border post previously controlled by the Russian army. Arriving at the base, Raven didn't find two of his friends who were new soldiers like him, Clem and Dume. They were both apparently sent to another border to stake out and were watched by a highly known deadly Russian sniper named Sari, who had been in the area for hours. Sari had locked his aim, but before he shot, he deliberately recorded the action as proof of his excellent skills. Sometime later, the bodies of Clem and Dume were successfully evacuated to the base, leaving Mr. Gregory and everyone else, including Raven, shocked and grieved. Clem became one of the best snipers in the Ukrainian forces, so his death became a considerable loss for the Ukrainians. In the evening, Mr. Gregory had orders to take complete control of the border, so he had to stop the Russian snipers who had killed Clem and other Ukrainian sniper forces. Raven, Mr. Gregory, and his troops began to enter the border area. They left early in the morning, anticipating Russian soldiers roaming the area. Raven and the others immediately set a trap and prepared to fire. Sometime later, there were several Russian soldiers, and it turned out that one of them was a student of the man who had bullied Raven and was now defecting to Russia. But now that he's on a mission, Raven and his team are forced to slaughter them without exception. Their trap bomb exploded near the Russian army and instantly killed everyone, including the former Raven student. After that, Raven, Mr. Gregory, and the others made it to the first outpost of the Russian army. In the area, they slowly crawled in the middle of the savannah to keep an eye on the other two Russian soldiers' watch. When Raven was aiming, he finally realized that both soldiers were the ones who had raped and killed his wife. So, that makes him emotional and eager to take revenge. Mr. Gregory certainly didn't let Raven go and asked him to be patient and don't shoot. But Raven was already emotional and didn't hear Mr. Gregory's order. He shot the Russians and managed to kill one of them. Raven and Mr. Gregory were now in trouble because their positions were discovered. One of the remaining Russians immediately told Sari, who was also there. It didn't take long. The great Sari killed Mr. Gregory quite quickly. The death of Mr. Gregory had made Raven even more devastated. After that, Raven is met by Mr. Colonel, who asks him to avenge Mr. Gregory's death by killing the Russian snipers. He immediately gave Raven a single-handed mission to take out two Russian snipers lurking in a region. The position of the two Russian snipers was quite challenging to target because one was inside an empty building and the other was camouflaged into a pile of garbage. But it turned out that Raven had been among the weeds and had been there for hours, much earlier than the two Russian snipers. When the sniper disguised as garbage started to move backward, Raven shot him and managed to take a headshot. It didn't take long. Raven also shot a Russian sniper inside the building. even though he was also shot in the arm. After some time passed, Raven got a call from the Ukrainian army headquarters. In that place, Mr. Colonel described the Russian sniper Seri, who published a videotape of when he massacred 5 Ukrainian snipers, including Clem and Mr. Gregory. Not only that, but Seri also took out 3 machine gunners of the Ukrainian army, and his goal of publishing a video was to scare the Ukrainian military. Mr. Colonel then explained that Seri was very dangerous and had to be stopped immediately because he was using a modern rifle that could shoot the right target within 1,500 meters. The Colonel conveyed his goal of gathering Raven and other snipers to carry out a mission to raid a chemical factory controlled by the Russian army. It was possible that the Russian snipers, including Seri, were also there. He then explained the strategy to be implemented. First, he would fire machine guns as a diversion, then the snipers would protect the raid team from the rear, and Raven would sneak into the factory and take out Seri. The next scene shows Raven slowly crawling into the chemical plant. The Ukrainian sniper team and Mr. Colonel stood by in their respective positions. On the other hand, Seri and several of his men were also in a shooting position inside the factory. Raven made it to the factory and killed all the Russians he met. Shortly after, Mr. Colonel fired a machine gun as a signal to the Ukrainian army while diverting the attention of the Russian sniper. At the same time, the Ukrainian sniper team opened fire simultaneously and managed to kill all their targets. Meanwhile, Raven began slowly entering the factory building, finally finding out where Seri was. Seri did not know that all the Russian soldiers guarding him outside the building had been wiped out. Raven immediately jumped up and killed Seri with a knife. He then killed 2 of Seri's men using Seri's sniper and a grenade. But the battle wasn't over yet. A truck suddenly emerged and brought the Russians to the factory. Raven came back with Seri's rifle to prepare for targeting the Russian army's reinforcements. Raven aimed directly at the military's captain and managed to shoot him. At the same time, the Ukrainian sniper team again opened fire on the Russian soldiers, who got off the truck and drove to massacre them all. After successfully carrying out the mission, Raven visited the former ruins of his house. There he saw a pile of stones forming the symbol of peace made by his wife. He then visited Natasha's grave at once to ask permission to continue her struggle. The movie ends by showing Raven, now a professional sniper, in the middle of a location shrouded in snow. He is ready to shoot anyone and anything. The moral that can be learned from this movie is that war will only bring sorrow and vengeance.